Going to be talking about ShakeOut 2023. And tonight, going to give you a little bit of background, where it started and what it's evolved into and what it is evolving into in the future. And the future is going to be what we're going to be talking a lot about tonight and how it's going to affect all of us and make things better for amateur radio. I really have a strong feeling about this. So I want to thank Steve, Phil, and Oliver for all their help in putting this together tonight. There's a lot of information in here, and I really have to give credit to those guys for the assistance in doing this. So here we go. Shakeout. So Shakeout began here in Southern California. We are in earthquake country here. Now there are earthquakes occur around the country, but not like we get in California. This place you can't trust the ground you stand on. So this whole thing about Shakeout was organized by something called the Earthquake Country Alliance in 2008. And that first year, there were 5.3 million participants in the event. And this is just an exercise, a drill. And they're just anybody. I mean, it's governments, it's corporations, it's civilians, all involved in this. So schools, lots and lots of communities involved in it. And they held essentially hold week-long events to get information out to the public about earthquake safety and preparedness. This is a big deal here. And just like in other parts of the country, we have hurricanes and we have snowstorms, we have tornadoes, and all of these kinds of things. It's all about preparedness. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later and why this is important. So the public information is about preparing, responding, and recovering from, in this case, an earthquake disaster. But since 2008, this event has really grown. It has taken off. Last year, there were over 18 million registered U.S. participants. I'm happy to say I was one of those. We had our Aries group here in Eastern Kern County involved, and we had ourselves a little exercise. This year, we're expecting in excess of 50 million participants. As of a couple of days ago, it was like 49.6, but we still got a week to go. And you guys, if you aren't signed up, you need to sign up, and we'll give you information on how to do that as well. But nowadays, it's global. It is a global event all over the world because we're not the only ones that get earthquakes here in California. They're all over the place. So this is a wonderful opportunity to learn about earthquakes and learn how to prepare and how to deal with an earthquake situation. So what is it really all about? It's about practicing earthquake safety. And the mantra is drop, cover, and hold. Drop, cover, and hold. That's what you'll hear. And the thing is that even a small jolt, an initial jolt, might be a foreshock, and you don't know if it'll be followed up by something bigger. So you want to be prepared, and that's where the drop, cover, and hold. That smallest jolt can grow into something large, and we can tell from personal experience that that's true. So the first step is drop. Now, what does that mean? Drop down to the floor, get on your hands and knees, and it prevents the movement from knocking you down. So in other words, the ground movement can literally knock you off your feet. So you want to be down on your hands and knees so that you don't fall over. So that's the idea there. Then the next step is to cover. Now, you've got to cover the sensitive parts of your body, like your head and neck. You can cover that with your arm and your hand and with your knees bent on the floor. And that's a good way to protect yourself. But if there's something nearby, like a desk or a table, you can crawl under that desk or table, and that'll provide you some safety. So if there's nothing available, like a desk or a table or something that you can climb under or crawl under, get next to an interior wall, because an interior wall tends to be a little bit sturdier than being out in the middle of a room. So this is a good thing to do. Next, oh, I should add, don't stand in a doorway. This has been a myth in earthquake country for decades. And the problem with standing in a doorway, we've found, is that the door can slam shut on your fingers. All kinds of nasty things can happen if the door's swinging back and forth. So you don't want to do that. The best thing is to just get next to a wall on your hands and knees, get under a table, get under a desk. You'll be in good shape. Last but not least, hold on until the shaking stops. So at that point, you can probably try and stand up, and Oliver, thank you. K6OLI has just put something in the chat there about registering for ShakeOut. Thank you. And I've got a link here in the presentation. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, how you do that. So moving on. But maybe your situation is different. What if you're in a wheelchair or a walker or you use a cane? How do you deal with that? Well, you have to adapt. You have to adapt. So we give some ideas for that of drop, cover, and hold on using a cane, or possibly well, like I mentioned, we'll get to that. But drop, what you want to do is drop, if you can, drop down or just sit in a chair. Sit in a chair, keep your cane nearby so you can get back up, and again, protect yourself. If you can get underneath something, that's great. If you can't, then use your hands and arms to protect your neck and the back of your head. And you're protecting from falling objects, things falling off of shelves and what have you. That's an important aspect. If you happen to have a walker or a wheelchair, lock the wheels if you can. That's the first step. And then get as low as possible. If you can't get out of the walker or can't get out of the wheelchair, get as low as you possibly can. And again, protect yourself and use whatever you have on hand. It might be a book or a pillow or something like that. Put that over the back of your neck. Use your arms. Again, arms and hands. But you want to protect the back of your neck. You want to protect your head, again, from falling objects. So this is it. And if you want more information, this is in the this will be in the PDF that I'll submit to Dan later this evening. There is a link in there for drop, cover, and hold on, and you can click on that and find out all kinds of additional information. So moving on with ShakeOut. ShakeOut includes a lot of partners and sponsors. At a national level, we have FEMA, as well as the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, and the National Science Foundation. These organizations are the sponsors of ShakeOut. We also have national partners in ShakeOut, things like the Southern California Earthquake Center, and again, FEMA, USGS, and NSF are all involved as partners. The National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, the Earthquake Country Alliance, the guys that started this, and the Central United States Earthquake Consortium, Federal Alliance for Safe Homes. So these guys are all involved in this. And what you'll find when you go to the website, the shakeout.org website, you'll find that there's listings there. You can check on your state, your area, find out who's involved there. You'll find lots of state, federal, local governments, state governments are all involved in this at all different levels, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world. So go check that out. So what have we done in past years? Well, in past years, many of our emergency response groups would just hold drills, like going back to 2008, that very first ShakeOut. We'd have ourselves an exercise. And I was living in Orange County at the time with an Aries group down there. And yeah, excellent comment. I've heard that same thing. That's why you don't want to do it. And so we'd hold a drill coinciding with ShakeOut, and we'd work with our AHJs, our authorities having jurisdiction. In the case of Orange County, for me, it was the Orange County Emergency Medical System, part of the Orange County Healthcare. And up here, we work with our hospital, Ridgecrest Regional Hospital, as well as our EOC and Ridgecrest Police Department. So we held a drill last year in 2022 with our group here, Eastern Kern County Aries, had a great success with that. And we make good use of this. It's a good opportunity. Participate in preparedness events with those AHJs. Many of the AHJs, many of your served agencies, your AHJs, do hold preparedness fairs. So that's something you want to be aware of, something you want to get involved in. Now, it is the last week, but there'll probably still be some things going on. Now, more recently, there's been a direct amateur radio involvement with USGS, and this is important. Many of you are very well aware of this. If you've ever dealt with being in an earthquake and you're familiar with something called Did You Feel It? Did You Feel It is a website managed by USGS that collects data from citizens. And that data are used to create things like the shake maps. They also directly go into something called Pager, which we'll talk about shortly. We'll talk about how Did You Feel It feeds pager, which is an important tool used by first responders and local, state, and federal governments. So the development of the Did You Feel It was done some time back. And of course, those of us living here in earthquake country, we're always, oh, ground's shaking. I better go do a Did You Feel It? Fill that in, get some information to USGS. When I was living in LA, that was a pretty common thing to do. Of course, living here, we get more earthquakes here than I ever got in LA. But we're in earthquake country where we live. So we're going to talk about how this has evolved into Winlink. So amateur radio can directly support sending a Did You Feel It form to USGS. So I want to speak from experience a little bit. We've had some big earthquakes. I mentioned that our areas group has participated up here in Did You Feel It last year and the year before we did. Basically, what you want to do is have your group. If you're with an areas group or a DCS or some type of a emergency response group, you're going to create an incident action plan that's based on having a magnitude thus and so earthquake. And then you're going to execute that plan with maybe your served agencies like hospitals or local EOC or first responders. And this is something that you want to do. So this is a good opportunity for amateur radio emergency response groups to get out and have an exercise. So let's talk about Did You Feel It? So this was created by the Earthquake Hazards Program. It was started by USGS, and it collects, historically has collected data via the internet and is used to create things like the maps that we see, the shake maps and things of that nature. And it's based on what people experience. So it shows what people experience. Call it citizen science, where common citizens are supplying data. Well, did anything fall off the shelves? Did any windows crack? Did any walls crack? Did appliances move around on the floor? These things are aggregated. A number of these experiences are aggregated to create a value called modified Mercalli intensity scale that describes what the people experience, what the citizens experience. Not the science, it's what the people actually, it's call it subjective data from the people that experience the earthquake. And it helps authorities determine extent of damage and things like that. But there's a problem. There's what is called a donut hole in a large disaster, let's say an earthquake. Infrastructure near the center of the earthquake, the epicenter, tends to be damaged to the extent that you can't use telephones, you can't use the internet, your cell phones don't work. So if you don't have internet access, you can't file a Did You Feel It to the USGS because you have to go to their webpage on the internet to fill it out. So it's totally dependent on the availability of the internet. And if the internet goes down, which is not an uncommon thing to happen in an earthquake, you lose telephones, you lose everything. You use all your utilities, you're dead in the water. So no Did You Feel It? So this creates the donut hole. So we're dependent on that internet availability. No internet, no data. So this is what happens when the internet is unavailable. You get the donut hole. So the data is not available from the most severely affected locations. Okay, this is a problem. So I want to reference you to a paper, an article, and again, this link is in the PDF that you'll get. So don't bother writing any of this down. You'll be able to see it in the recording. But let me give you an example. This was an earthquake that occurred near Salt Lake City in Utah, and this gives a progression of the donut hole. And so you see there was a tremor. This 5.7 magnitude magna earthquake was affecting Salt Lake City. You notice that there's no data from where the earthquake occurred, which is right about here. You should be able to see my pointer there in the center. You know what? I'm going to get my laser pointer on. That's what I need to do. There we go. So this is where the earthquake occurs. So 53 minutes after the earthquake occurred, we've got a lot of data coming in from the outlying areas, but not a great deal of data from where the earthquake actually occurred. So as time progresses, we go to 83 minutes. We're getting more data now because services are coming back alive. More and more data, 4 hours, 17 minutes, 10 hours after the earthquake took place. and we're finally getting data near the epicenter. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. 10 hours delay to find out what's actually going on in this zone is just an unacceptable situation. Well, along comes the solution. Following a Tumblr, people do fill out, did you feel it? I know I certainly do. And that you go to the USGS website and you see a lot of data coming in. And it's good data from the surrounding areas, not necessarily from where the earthquake took place, but they get good data. But they are missing data from the areas most severely affected. So the question is posed, how can the USGS, in addition to worldwide seismic organizations, in particular Europe, there was a lot of discussion between USGS and Europe, and how they get this data. How can you get this data? Well, one of our local folks here, who we all know well from RATPAC, he's been here many times speaking, but Oliver Dully, K6OLI, contacted the USGS and basically just sent them an email and said, what about, we need to talk about amateur radio. Amateur radio could be used as a data collection tool because, golly, there's hams probably in the donut hole. We know there are. So he contacted them. And of course, Oliver was already working with the Winlink development team, working on forms for Winlink. If you use Winlink, you see a lot of his handiwork and the handiwork of the Winlink development team on the Winlink forms, the Winlink templates. So Oliver, along with Mike Burton and Greg Trucklewhip, this is N6 or XE2 stroke N6KZB and KG6SJT. These guys got together and they created a Winlink Did You Feel It form. And the data from this form is unique. It is coordinated. They basically coordinated the transposition of USGS Did You Feel It data, in other words, the data from the form, onto the Winlink, from their form onto the Winlink form, so that they collect the same data as they do from the internet. That's the idea. You're collecting the same data. However, there's one big difference. There's a tag, there's a JSON tag, and that can be filtered. And that JSON tag is for an exercise. That exercise tag is unique to the Winlink form, which means we can do exercises, we can do drills and pretend, do a simulation that there's an earthquake, and USGS will collect the data. However, we check the little exercise box, actually it's the default, and that data is filtered and kept separate in the same database, but it's kept separate from the citizen science data they get from the real thing. Of course, that form also has a real event checkbox. So if you are in a real event, you're encouraged to do that. And rightly so, hams are encouraged by the USGS to use this form, whether it's for real or for an exercise. Use it during drills and exercises. This is really important. And I meant to take the next line out. I screwed it up because it's all in the same database. So we'll just ignore that next line and I'm going to go to the next slide. It's all in the same database. I mentioned this earlier, Pager. This is a data product from USGS. And what it stands for is Prompt Assessment of Global Earthquakes for Response. So Pager takes the data from citizen science, from things like the Did You Feel It, and it provides shaking and loss estimates. Pager data are provided to governments, corporations, and citizens, in particular first responders. So getting that information out to them in a timely fashion is very important. You saw the donut hole in Salt Lake City 10 hours before the data were filled in. With amateurs, these data points can be filled quickly from our resources, from our amateur radio operators in the donut hole. Generally, the Pager alerts are available within 30 minutes and they're updated as new data come in to the system. So the Did You Feel reports that we do and that the citizens do flow into that Pager product. So I'm going to give you an example of Pager, and this is one near and dear, you might imagine. Let's see. Oh, I've got to get rid of this guy and go back to the pointer. This occurred in my backyard, our backyard, in 2019, and this is I'm going to move this window over so you can see it. You should be seeing my web page now, a web browser. This is what the pager report looks like. So it has estimated fatalities, estimated economic losses, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. There's a shake map, so this shows you the regions affected, and I can tell you that I'm right about where that arrow is. Right there is where we're located, right smack dab in the middle of it in Inyokern, right here. There's the modified Mercalli intensity scale readings here. Ridgecrest, China Lake, well, China Lake Acres and Inyokern. We received the brunt of it, as did the China Lake Naval Weapons Station here in the valley. In fact, they got the worst of it. The Navy base here was really hammered. Searles Valley is over on the other side of the mountains here, but they still had this intensity 6. Now, what do those numbers mean? We scroll down here, we see that 7 is very strong, and I guarantee you it was very strong. 6 is strong enough. It's plenty strong as well. Now, what's interesting is their estimates here, fatalities. There were no fatalities whatsoever in our earthquake here, and it was a magnitude 7.1 earthquake. And the reason that we didn't have any fatalities was because it occurred on a holiday, July 5th. It was preceded with a foreshock of magnitude 6.4 on July 4th. Everybody's on vacation, so nobody was at work. None of the kids were at school, so the ceilings collapsing in the school, buildings collapsing, just lots of destruction, to the tune of this is way underestimated because it doesn't take into account the base, close to $5 million worth of damage to the naval base here in that 7.1 earthquake. Much smaller. This is probably more realistic to the cities, Ridgecrest, Inyokern, and Trona are probably in this 35% area here. But boy, I'll tell you, the base really got hammered, and they're still recovering from it, but they're making good progress. I will say that. So anyway, this is pager. This is what goes out to everyone, and this is the deal. So back here. So more information on pager, you can go to the USGS website, and there's another link that I've got in there, and this will bring up an explanation, and this is the page. This will bring up an explanation on what pager is all about. You can check this out. It talks about all the components of it, and I urge you to go check that out. Take a look at it. It's good information. Well, this year, 2023, we're going to have an important change, and I'm calling it an important twist to what we normally do on ShakeOut. And this year, FEMA and CISA have taken a big interest in Did You Feel It? Amateur radio represents the best source of ground truth in any disaster, in the disaster area, in the donut hole. That's what we provide. We've got the communications ability, not relying on any infrastructure, but our own. And we have the ability to present that data. And Did You Feel It is a good example of how you can present that data to an agency, a served agency, to the government officials, emergency management agencies, et cetera. Amateur radio is a great source of that ground truth. Now, what makes it particularly interesting this year is we're going to show the value of Winlink. Winlink supplying Did You Feel It information will paint a picture for those emergency management agencies at all levels of government of what we can provide by amateur radio in short time, timely fashion, within that window where they need to get the pager reports out in the case of an earthquake. But this could apply to anything. It's not just earthquakes. It can apply to any situation. Just so happens that the Did You Feel It is a good example that we will use this year to represent this test. It's considered a test. It's a demonstration for our government to show the value of Winlink in an emergency. And I can quote, and I love this. This is from FEMA regarding ShakeOut 2023. And I'm quoting it verbatim. A secondary and extremely important purpose for emergency management at all levels to participate in this exercise is to illustrate the capabilities of the Winlink system to provide situational awareness, ground truth, regardless of the specific information gathered. And that's exactly what a system like DigiFeel can provide. Now, DigiFeel it's not going to provide information about hurricanes and tornadoes and wildfires. Those are going to take probably specialized forms that will be built for those situations. Even a field situation report could be used. But this demonstrates a system to the government that uses information provided by amateur radio operators that can be fed back to those emergency management agencies. This is a big deal. And my belief, and several others here will share this thought with me, that this is the single greatest opportunity that we've had for amateur radio in decades. I feel very strongly about this. We can really show the utility to those emergency management organizations in our government. I really encourage everyone who can to participate with this, and we're going to give you instructions on how to do so shortly. We'll talk about filling out the forms and everything. I also want to mention that Winlink, if you're not familiar with Winlink, or if you're not aware of this, Winlink is managed by the Amateur Radio Safety Foundation, Incorporated, arsfi.org. And of course, you can go to their website, find out more information about Winlink. You can go to winlink.org and find more information about Winlink. But this is a project under ARSFI, and they've been working with FEMA this year for ShakeOut 2023. So that's where this is coming from. So why is FEMA interested? Why are they interested in this? They've got some specific requirements for this year. What they're going to do is we send the data to USGS. That's automatic. When you fill out the form and submit it, and you post it and you send it, it automatically goes to USGS. But FEMA is planning on forwarding this data to some additional agencies, and this is part of this demonstration. So USGS gets it. It's automatically sent to this email address. This is the DigiFeel DYFI_reports under automated at usgs.gov. That's where it goes into their filters into the database, their databases for DigiFeel. And this year we have a special edition. It's a tactical address called Quake-23. And this is going to be used by amateurs, by CISA shares, and by Part 90 public safety land mobile radio systems to collect DigiFeel data. So we're not the only ones that are going to be doing this. Shares and land mobile radio are all going to be involved in this. And we're going to be sharing, it's a simulation, but it's ground truth situational awareness. Important stuff. This is going to go typically to federal, state, and local authorities having jurisdiction and non-government organizations. Things like Red Cross, even corporations can use the data coming out of this system. But this is the idea. But we know that two specific agencies are going to be following along with this. The South Carolina Emergency Management Division is one that will be collecting data and looking at it. The second one is the Oregon Emergency Management Agency. They're going to be collecting data as well. And they'll be processing and evaluating the value of this system. I think they're going to find that it's very valuable. And that's why I say this is a great opportunity for hams for the amateur radio community to show how we can help. Last but not least, I want to share that Wave Talkers, if you're familiar with Wave Talkers, they do a lot of instructional sessions on Winlink. They plan on doing a live stream on YouTube during the event. So go take a look at that. I have a URL for that as well, a link, wavetalkers.com. You can go to their website and it'll provide a link to the live stream. So they just did a session on ShakeOut this past weekend. I encourage you to go to their website and have a look at that. So let's see. I see a lot of stuff showing up in. Oh, Oliver's adding. Yeah, do take a look at chat. Oliver's adding a lot of information in there, and I appreciate it. Thank you, as well as Phil. I don't know. Steve's been popping stuff in there. If anybody has any questions, we've got a great panel of people here who can answer just probably about any question that you may have about ShakeOut, DigiFeel, and Winlink. So I'm going to share some instructions now. Let's talk about this. And this is some of the really important stuff that we have to talk about. First of all, the objectives of the exercise. The objective is for amateurs and others, shares users and land mobile radio users, to send a DigiFeel to the USGS and the tactical address Earthquake 23. This is our objective, is to do this. They want us to complete this within 1 hour of 10:19 a.m. at your local time. 10:19. This occurs on 10:19. It's October 19th, 10:19 in the morning, local time. That's when you're going to submit this. Well, you're going to submit within an hour, but that's the time and date of the simulated earthquake. And I will say that it's okay to send it after. You can send the Digifeel it later in the day. Like if you're at work and you can't do anything when you get home from work, go ahead and fill out a form and send it in. But make sure that the time and date are correct on the Digifeel it form. Make sure it's 10:19, 10:19, 23. Very important. We prefer that you use an RF link for the Winlink submissions. That's really what we want to have you do, is if you have the ability to send it by RF, do that. If you can do it by a radio link, and state as such on your Digifeel it in the comments. This was submitted via HF over Winlink. On the other hand, if you don't have access to an RF link, Telnet is perfectly acceptable. You can use the internet. Another important aspect of this is the exercise ID. This is mandatory. 2023 ShakeOut, just like you see it there. We'll keep talking about that. This will keep coming up. You need to follow the instructions that we're going to present here tonight if you're going to participate and submit this. You really need to do this. One of the things we've uncovered is that if people don't follow the instructions precisely, it can lead to all kinds of issues. And the issues can be corrupted data and things like that. So we want to make sure that folks follow things correctly. So pay attention to what we're going to talk about here. And of course, go watch the video when it's posted on YouTube, download the charts, have yourself a hard copy of it, and take a look at it. But you need to follow the instructions that we're going to present. And if you want to get a copy of the instructions, you can go to this link. Here's yet another link, and this will bring up the ShakeOut instructions, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is it right here. This was prepared by, I think, Steve and Phil put this together. So this is something to be aware of. Check it out. It's got a lot of good information in there and a lot of good instruction on what you're going to do. Basically what we're going to talk about in the next part of this talk. So here we go. Step number 1, there's 2 important things you need to do. Make sure you have the latest version of Winlink Express. You know, it prompts you for that. When you bring Winlink up, it'll prompt you if there's a new version available. And it'll say, do you want to update or do you want to skip it? Well, be sure you do the update. The default is to skip it. So you're going to want to make sure you hit the update button. And you don't just hit return. I've gotten myself into trouble with that. I can vouch for that. If you just hit return, you don't update. You want to take your mouse and go click on it and update. The next thing, of course, that other important thing is that you get the latest forms templates as well. Make sure they're all up to date. Okay, so now you've got the latest version of Winlink Express. You've got the latest version of the templates. You can open your Winlink application up, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to select New Message from the header up here. New Message. When you do that, you're going to get another window that'll pop up, which is the template where you can select. Well, it's going to pop up a new message window, and we're going to go to the Select Template tab on the new message. And when we go to that, we're going to get this pop up, which is the template manager. And the one we want to use, the template we're going to use is this. So we're going to double click on standard templates because these are all collapsed when you open it up. We'll double click on that. We'll double click on USGS down here, and we'll double click on the USGS DYFI.txt entry here. Now, when you do that, what's going to come up is another form. And this is going to come up in your web browser. And what it's going to look like is this right here. This is going to open in your browser. Now, this is the whole form won't fit on one page in here. I want it big enough so everybody can see it. This is going to be in 3 parts, but it's all one form. You'll scroll down. So these are the things that this is the form you're going to run into, is this earthquake, did you feel it? It's going to open in your browser, and we're going to start filling things in. Like, for instance, the highlighted yellow items must be filled in as shown. So this is going to be filled in as an exercise. There's the exercise button right there. This is not a real event. This is an exercise. The exercise ID is not optional. We want you to fill in 2023 shakeout, just like that. And you're going to say, yep, I felt it. Yep, I felt it. The date, 10/19/2023, and the time is 10/19. Important that that's in there. What happens is when you open this form, it'll automatically fill in the time when you open the form up. So you're going to have to go back and change that value. It has it reads the current time on your computer and fills that form in. So you're going to have to go back and fill that in. The next thing you're going to need to fill, and this is required information, is your street address. This is for USGS to know where you are, where you're filing your report from. You can also include latitude and longitude in that as well. Now, if you don't fill out the latitude and longitude, Oliver, Steve, or Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if you don't fill in the exact, these 4 digits of GPS coordinates, it'll use the center of your grid square, which comes from your instance of Winlink. It's all part of your setup in Winlink is your location by grid square. So it'll map the center of the grid square, but we would like to see the actual coordinates entered in here out to 4 decimal places. And of course, you can use it. You can use GPS. If you have a GPS, you can look it up. I use, if I want to get a GPS or a coordinate location, I'll use Google Maps and just click on the spot, and you get info about that spot. I think it's a right click on the spot. It'll bring up info about that location, including latitude and longitude. So that's a good way to get it. Just go to Google Maps. So this is what you want to fill out here. And of course, the green areas, like I said, are specific to your location. And again, using latitude and longitude to 4 decimal places will give you an accurate, that's plenty of accuracy for what we're doing here. It's extremely accurate. Okay, so the next part of the form. These are all, like multiple choice type things, or you're given a bunch of examples of things to select. We want you to set it up as a default intensity level 5. That's the plan. And if you click the ones we talk about here, it asks you, what's your situation? I'm inside a building. If you were in the building, what floor were you on? Second floor of a 2-story building. And were you asleep? No, not asleep. And did others nearby feel it? So we're gonna fill in that information right there. Then go to the next part of the form, and we'll continue filling in the check boxes. And the question here, was there any damage to the building? And you can select multiple things, but in this case, we're just going to say hairline cracks in the walls. Okay. Now there's another part to this form, which you may or may not wish to fill out. In fact, probably most parts of the country and the world won't have this, but here in California, we have something called the Early Earthquake Warning System. And we basically receive a warning over our cell phone as a message. And if we get that, we can optionally fill the survey in about that. And it talks about if we got the message and et cetera, et cetera. So you toggle that on or off with this button here, or this link here will toggle it on and off. But once you've got all the information filled out, again, fill out comments. I mentioned comments on here earlier about things like, what mode are you using? Are you using the telnet mode of Winlink? Are you using VARA FM or VARA HF, or maybe PACTOR 3 or PACTOR 4 or something like that? Some other mode. Do make a note about that in there. That's good information to have, to know how this message got to USGS and the other agencies. All right. So now we're going to submit the form. We're going to click that little submit button down there, and that's going to take us to the next. That's going to take us to the next thing that's going to pop up, which is a little pop-up that comes up that says, "Did you feel it intensity?" Now, what this does is it looks at your data, the stuff you filled out, and it comes up with this modified Mercalli intensity scale, intensity 5, which is a moderate earthquake. And it's basically talking about the things that you talked about here. And this is what we're going to submit to USGS. So we click the continue button, and the next thing that's going to come up is it'll basically give you a blank tab or a blank window in your browser, and you can close that or do whatever with it, set it aside, minimize it, do what you need to do with the browser, and we're going to go back to Winlink, where we're going to get that new message is going to come up and it's going to be filled out. Now the this two entry is automatically filled out. Do not modify or change that one in any way. Leave that just as it is. In the CC, we're going to have you add Quake, just as you see it there, all caps, Quake-23. So you're not going to change the to field. You're going to add the other one to the CC. The carbon copy field is going to get Quake-23. And the subject, don't change the subject either. Just leave that as it is. But you're going to manually enter that carbon copy address. This is what your messages looks like. This is all the JSON code that was provided by the forum. And that's never mind. I can't do that. Anyway, yeah, I'm asleep at the wheel here. But one thing you can do, if you feel like it, go ahead and add if somebody in your group, your agency, or your organization is interested in the data, wants to collect the data, they can do so by adding an address here. And it might be a call sign, a Winlink call sign. It could be a tactical address. Make sure you use a semicolon after the Quake-23 to do so. This is a useful thing for many organizations. We collect the data out here in California, in Southern California. We have a group here that collect our digifields and process them for after-action reports on our exercises here. So that's the way you can do that. But just don't add anything to the to. Don't change the to line up here. Leave that one as it is. Okay. So now that you're finished, you've done all of that. Hit the post to outbox. Send it to Winlink, and then you can send the message by whatever method you're going to use. Now, this is what I just noticed, and I want to comment on this. Yeah, both Steve and Phil are making comments. Pay attention to the comments tonight. Oliver's reminding us that the intensity pop-up itself is a single entry. It's not a USGS product or meaningful. The intensity is measured over an area. So you really need to take a lot of these measurements of these intensities to really come up with a picture of what's going on. So I think, Oliver, the number you've told me is like they have a minimum of 20 reports to receive for an area before they can use it as meaningful information or meaningful data to provide meaningful information on what's occurring in that area. So this is something to pay attention to. Make sure that you add that tactical address. That is absolutely essential, important item. You can see the comments there that both Phil and Steve and Oliver have made, and this is all going to be going into after action reports after the event. I want to mention the modified Mercalli scale. This may be a new, everybody's familiar with the Richter scale and all of this stuff. Well, the modified Mercalli scale is a little different, and this is based on human perception. It's not based on scientific measurement. It's based on perception. And that's an important point, because it allows us to relate to things that, this allows us to relate to what might be going on in a certain type of situation, a certain type of earthquake. So this modified Mercalli scale here, this is the modified Mercalli scale. It talks about the intensities. We were talking about a 7 here in Ridgecrest and Indian Wells Valley. Let me tell you, very strong is that's a pretty insufficient description in my mind, having been here for that. We feel that it was much stronger than that. But this is what comes from the citizen science, what other people perceived. We happened to be in a spot that got hit really hard. Thankfully, not a lot of damage, but we did get hit with this thing. So this human perception. They feel it's more meaningful to non-scientists than magnitude. If somebody tells you there was a magnitude 7.1 earthquake, what does that mean? It means the ground shook. The ground shook a lot, but we can't relate to that. This is something we can relate to, that Modified Mercalli scale 7 is very strong. So damage negligible in good design buildings and good design and construction. Slight to moderate, well-built, ordinary structures. And considerable damage to poorly built or badly designed structures, and some chimneys broken. Yeah, a lot of chimneys, a lot of homes knocked off of foundations, a lot of mobile homes knocked off of foundations. In the city of Trona here on the other side of the mountains, there are a lot of homes that were totally destroyed. So yeah, it was very strong, but that gives us an idea of what to expect in this sort of a thing. So that's the idea of this scale. So it really relates to what you actually experience, and that's what they're after. So we're generating this modified Mercalli intensity value based on collecting data from a number of sources within a region or within an area, processing that data to come up with this end product. So more on the instructions. Let's see. You can download. I did this before, but we're going to do it again. Download the instructions from this link here, and this will be in the PDF you can download. Just download the instructions. You can go to winlink.org and read the ShakeOut article. There's a good article on the winlink.org, their front page. Take a look at that. Do go to the shakeout.org site and sign up. If you haven't already signed up, do sign up for it. There's a lot of information on the shakeout.org website, plenty of information there for you. Sign up if you haven't already, but if maybe you're in an Aries group or a DCS or a RACES group that's already signed up, find out about that. And by all means, do plan on participating at 10:19 a.m. on September 19th. Duck cover and hold on. I believe, let's see, you got a little bit more to go here. Oh yeah. One of the things we get if we participate, and this is from last year, you get a certificate. You can go to the shakeout.org website and download a certificate to say that you participated in the Great California Shakeout. Well, I don't know if it's going to be called the Great California Shakeout this year. I think it's probably going to be called the Great Shakeout. What, did I have the wrong date up there? Oh, I sure did. Dan, thank you. Oh, man. Oh, well, we all make mistakes. I'm sorry. I was half asleep this morning at about 3 a.m. when I wrote that. So
I thought you just put it out there so somebody would find a mistake.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us have looked at this. Nobody caught that. So yeah, I blew that. But yes, right. It is October 19th. That's a week from today, next Thursday. Thank you. And I need that buzzer that Steve has so I can one of our friends, when he makes a mistake on our nets, he has a buzzer that he blows in the background and makes all kinds of noise. That's what I need. Anyway, you can download this really cool certificate, hang it on your wall with the rest of your wallpaper, and have a lot of fun. So now we're going to open the floor to questions and comments. And like I said, we've got Steve Waterman and Phil Sherrod, as well as Oliver Dully. God, there we go. There's number 2. Oliver Dully out there to answer any questions that we have. We've got all the guys there. So everybody, if you have anything to ask, do speak up. Raise your hands or put something in chat. And boy, oh boy.
Hopefully your information is so complete that everybody gets it.
Hey, Dan's got his hand up. We'll call on him. And I might remind everybody, if you got a camera, when you come on, please turn your camera on. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I've been to a number of these RATPAC presentations, and they're really fantastic. But here in Illinois, the last earthquake we had was a 5.0 back in 1982. That's not something that happens much around here.
Right.
You get much participation from this part of the country?
Let me tell you, Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Ohio, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi form the Central United Earthquake Consortium that deal with the New Madrid Fault.
Yeah.
Less than a month ago, I attended a meeting with all of those states at the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, and they were very concerned because of the timing and the where we are today. And they have formed an emergency communication working committee that meets monthly on Teams, and it is a very serious matter. Just because you don't feel it doesn't mean you won't feel it. So I don't know where you lived prior, but if you ask around, you'll find that this is a very serious subject and a lot of money spent on it in Illinois.
Well, I guess the fact that we haven't had one in a long time could mean that we're due to have one soon. I've lived in Florida, not much earthquake there. Southern California back in the 50s and 60s. Every time you had an earthquake, it was like, is this going to be the big one or what?
Yeah, exactly.
Never was,
Right.
but always wondered.
So, Steve, I can add something else to that. One of the things that I shared on one of the charts was, and you can get a link from the ShakeOut.org website, is the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, and they've got an interesting map on there. I should have put that up here. Now that I think about it, that would have been a good add to this presentation. It shows what they consider to be the hazardous areas across the United States that are potential earthquake zones. And you'd be surprised where some of them is. And New Madrid is certainly one of them. But
South Carolina.
Yep, South Carolina, Texas.
Yep.
Of course, California, the entire West Coast, the Cascades. All of this. It's everywhere. So just because you haven't had one for a long time doesn't mean you won't. Something to be aware of.
And let's remind ourselves that regardless of the subject matter, the process of getting that data in is important, whether it's weather, hospital bed count, temperature, amount of rain, amount of snow, whatever the subject matter is, internet out, POTS, voice over IP out, whatever the situational awareness is, the process remains the same for us in reporting. And that's what they're looking at. They're looking to see whether we're going to really be able to do it or not.
Okay, I see hands up there. I'll get to you all. Okay, Bill in Idaho. And incidentally, Idaho does have an earthquake now and then, believe it or not.
Well, I wanted to bring up one point. I was actually was at the 3/18/20 when the earthquake hit Salt Lake City. And it was amazing how many people, I mean, literally there's just this deer in the headlights stare, like, what's going on? And, we're located on a fault, but one hadn't happened in so long that when it hit, nobody was ready for it. I mean, and it was amazing. I was sitting in the chief pilot's office answering the phone, and I have somebody from Atlanta calling me up, like, what's going on? And I said, well, we just had an earthquake. And they go, there's no way you can have an earthquake. Salt Lake does not have earthquakes. Okay, so that just tells you right there where you're going to be sitting when, I mean, outside people from around the country do not understand that your part of the country can have an earthquake. It is amazing how slow things go. So I think that's something we all have to wrap our heads around, that just because you haven't had one doesn't mean you won't. And when it happens, you'll be surprised how many people are just looking at their shoes and staring at their navels going, what just happened? So that's the other thing is, I just want to make sure our amateur radio club is working with the school system and EOC to put together net control and do a whole thing. I'll do my best to get this thing within an hour, but it's going to be, I got like 3 things going on for the Great Shakeout this year. So it's going to be, I'll do my best to get the information as quickly as possible. So that's all I want to bring up there.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Really good. Thank you for representing Idaho like that. Okay, I think we have Bill Jeans on here next. No, Bill, the AC7SR, Washington.
Yes, sir. Good program. Quick question on registering for ShakeOut. I've already registered my areas group. Do individuals need to register as well, or do we update our numbers when I finally have how many actually participate? And second item, if they just go with my registration, can they still download the certificate if they want wallpaper?
Oh yeah. Okay. So what I would do, first of all, to answer the first question, you can register your organization and you can always update the information. You have basically you've created an account on shakeout.org, so you can go back and update the information if you get a final count. So that's something you could do. You can download yourself the certificates and present them to your members, or you can give them the link to be able to download it from your group. I haven't tried doing that to see if members of the group can download it and make the certificate. But I think from it really should be incumbent upon me as the emergency coordinator to do that for our members and get those certificates made up and give it to our members.
Good idea.
You can't take the ham out of ham.
So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, Gene, you're ready. Come on, take her away.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My question is about aftershocks. How would they be reported as a new I felt it again, different report, addendum to an existing report? How would that work?
They're sent in as additional did you feel it's every time you feel something you send in a did you feel it. So, and trust me, we had now I wasn't going to send in a did you feel it for every aftershock we had up here, but we had something like 20,000 aftershocks to our 7.1 earthquake over the course of a few months. So it was, for a number of weeks we were getting large aftershocks. So yeah, we certainly were submitting those, and of course they make use of that data. That's all usable data to use USGS. Whether it's the initial, in our case, we had we started with a 6.4. There was actually a lot of activity prior to that. This is a very active seismic area where we live. There's a lot of geothermal activity here, so we get a lot of earthquakes. So usually when it's one that I feel, I will fill out one of the forms. And we had some before the big 6.4. They were pretty minor. So the kind of, that was, not really much of anything. But boy, the 6.4 was a good jolt. That was a wake-up call. The 7.1 was huge. And then the aftershocks after that were equally huge. And yeah, you don't want to go through something like that. I don't want to do that again. But I've been through plenty
Okay.
of. Yeah, each one would get.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. So if you're submitting an aftershock report, which would be a new report,
Yes.
would you reference the original report that you had sent?
Actually, what you would do is, if you're doing it over amateur radio, you're not gonna be able to really do it the way that you would do it online. If you're on the internet using their website, you can actually find the latest earthquakes listed. In fact, I can bring that up and show you what that looks like. You can see the latest earthquakes, and if you spot the one on there that's the one you felt, that's the one you're going to click on, and it'll say, "Did you feel it?" You'll click on that link, and it'll fill in that information for you. That's the online report, the one that's on their website. We don't do that on ours. So what you would do is to the best of your ability, kind of note the time when it occurred, and from your location and the did you feel it report over Winlink, they can probably correlate that to what they measured with their instrumentation. So there has to be some kind of a correlation made there. But yeah, you won't have each earthquake is given an event number, and you can see that on their website if you go to usgs.org. I can, if we're getting kind of late, I probably shouldn't do this. I was gonna say I can pull up their website and show you what it looks like. It's those of us in California, we're probably using it all the time. The other parts of the country might not be that interested in it, but we're on that site constantly. Gee, did you just feel that? Was that an earthquake? And a couple of minutes later, you'll go check out the site and say, sure enough, there was an earthquake right there. But it gives you a map and markers on the map that show the relative intensity of the earthquakes. So yeah, you want to do the aftershocks, and they are separate reports. All right. See, I saw some comments in here. Thanks, Gene. There was something in here that Yeah, one of the things that I didn't get into the presentation is it was trying to keep it timely, to a shorter time, but a lot of this information that we provide, like from the DigiFeelits and other WinLink forms, can be mapped. And if you think about it, your emergency management agencies, the AHJs, use GIS mapping systems where we can, in real time or near real time, be able to provide them data that can be used to update their maps in their incident command or their EOC or wherever they happen to be. That's the use of one of the really great uses of the data that we produce from things like the DigiFeelit. They can get nearly immediate updates to their GIS systems that show what's going on out in the field in what could be the donut hole. And that's why the latitude and longitude are important. That location information is important to know what's going on. So Dan's got his hand up there.
Sure does. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, good presentation, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Two things I would suggest considering are for aftershocks, forget about trying to look stuff up on USGS and just keep putting in new DigiFeelits and with all the empirical things that you felt during the aftershocks, instead of worrying about looking up the USGS identification number for the first one.
Yeah.
And well, that was it. That's the only comment that I really
Okay, Dan.
think would clear things up for a lot of people. And I think in California, we are extra fortunate as we get to practice DigiFeelits on a regular basis.
We sure do.
And just the thought that nationwide, something that's this useful could be observed by various agencies other than USGS.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity the amateur radio service hasn't ever had since World War II.
Yeah, it's been decades since we've had an opportunity like this, and
Yeah.
we want to take advantage of it to the max, and
Yep.
get as many people on WinLink submitting DigiFeelits as possible. Show the value.
Other than that, it was a perfect presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. Aside from the date being wrong, the September 19th. Oh, the shame.
Well, to make you feel better, I used to call Oliver Oscar all the time too.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Unfortunately, I bet Oliver does too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks to Phil and Steve and Oliver for all the stuff they put in the chat. This is one chat everybody should save.
Yeah, you need to. Well, this will be up on RATPAC.us in our matrix that we have up there of all the presentations. So there'll be a link for the video on YouTube. There'll be the PDF of the presentation, the charts, as well as the chat. Those will all be saved and put up on the web page there.
Oh,
RATPAC.us.
Well, one reminder, only because I forgot it over the last year, is that for your location, and I think that DigiFeelit handles it with if you have an accurate street address, but if you don't have a GPS attached to your computer, go to settings, the main settings page, and go to GPS settings and enter as precisely as you can where you are in decimal. And then down below it, don't forget to check the thing that says use this for your location. And that'll just refine the location. Steve,
And there's APIs that if you don't feel comfortable in dealing with latitude and longitude, put your actual address in there, and an API will put in your latitude and longitude where you send it.
Yeah.
But it's always good practice to put in decimal, longitude, and latitude, and make certain you know how. Don't wait till the second of the exercise. But if you are not able to do that and don't have the time and can't figure it out, stick in your actual address, and it will produce what's necessary when it arrives. Thank you.
Right now is a good time for everybody to find their longitude, latitude, put it on a piece of paper, type it, however you're going to do it, make a note on it, and stick it where you can find it. If this isn't the only time you need it, you might as well have it available to you. Gene, sorry, Victor, got you as a Gene again. Okay, Victor, go ahead.
Hey, with respect to the amateur radio involvement in all this, first off, I'm not on Winlink, so I can't answer or ask any questions about that. Is the operator's call sign included in that message? And that translates into a regular did you feel it report. Should operators be including their call sign on those reports? Will they be filtered out and then noted that this is an amateur radio contribution rather than a general public contribution? And I'm doing all of this because I'm always hoping that everything we do as amateur radio operators will be one more plus for us, one more gold star for anybody and everybody when they look to say what's the value of amateur radio, and it says here's one more tick for us. Thank you very much.
That's a good question. And yeah, your call sign essentially is included in the message, and they receive the message. USGS received the message. The Quake-2023 will receive the message. Your call sign is the from part of the message. So, you know, in my case, it'll be w6dq@winlink.org will be my address that'll show up as my from address on the email. So yeah, that's all there. And I agree. And you know, just because you're not on Winlink, I would encourage you to get on Winlink, but I encourage everyone to get on Winlink. It's an exceptional tool. This is how do I put it? If you're not on Winlink, do participate in the exercise anyway. You know, remember go to ShakeOut, register, do the drop, cover, and hold. Just practice that, and it's a good thing to practice. And I agree with what was said there about just going and getting your Latin long and just recording that. You know, you can get that on your cell phone, your mobile phone. You can get your GPS coordinates off of that, the latitude and longitude. You can get it off of things like Google Maps, like I mentioned, other mapping software that you can always get that information. So
Google Maps is the best place to get coordinates.
Oh, absolutely.
I think, and you could Google how to get them off of Google Maps if you don't know.
Yeah, just right click on your location, and
because you want the decimal version, not the degree version.
Yeah, it's decimal. Oh, you just reminded me, one thing that's very important is beware of the sign of your longitude. Here in the United States, it should be a negative number. If it isn't, they'll get a message. You'll get a message. But if you don't get a message, you're going to end up like in South Korea or something. You know, is where you're going to be located. But yeah, I think Steve, you said the new Did You Feel It has a test to make sure that all mappable forms have a test of reasonableness. A test of right. Perfect. Good info. Well, the first time we did it, there were 2 or 3 in China. Yeah, exactly. Well, this was great, and we really thank you very much for taking the time and energy to put this together. It's my pleasure, Steve. Thank you for your help. And Phil and Oliver, who left, I think. But we still got more questions coming.
Yes, we do. Go ahead, Victor. Pick it up. Go ahead.
Thanks, me. Yeah, I was going to say yes. I am participating. certainly am activating our local ACS in one form or another. So it's all good. I was just curious about those little persnickety details. Have a great week.
All right. Excellent.
Okay.
Dan?
And Gene, you want to come back on again, so take it away.
Yeah, I guess one last question. Somebody kind of like alluded to it earlier. What if, let's say, I am visiting the great country of Canada on this time frame? How would I report it from Canada or Mexico?
Well, it's the 1019 is local time wherever you are.
All right, so how would that come into like the
Excuse me?
long and last? I'm sorry, how would that come into the grid coordinates if I'm reporting from, let's say, Canada as opposed to
Put the address in.
Washington State or huh?
Put the address in.
The address, yeah. Mhm.
Look,
Okay,
go
thank
outside
you.
and look at the mailbox and put the address in.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great White North will work too, won't it? Great White North.
Okay, folks. Still looking for more hands. I'm going to mute a couple that hadn't muted themselves earlier. Any more comments here at all? I don't see any.
Thank you, Dan, for hosting this, and hopefully it'll make a noticeable difference over time.
I got some of the best people in the world sitting right here in this Zoom meeting that's making all this possible. And so it's my pleasure to do my small part, all of us to do our part by participating. Okay.
You got to manage us children. No, Dan, this is a great group. You said it. I cannot express how much I love working with the planning committee. This has just been a gas, and just participating in RATPAC has just been a defining moment in my amateur career. Let's put it that way.
Well, we've got a lot of spin-offs off of RATPAC. We've got a good sizable group, and they all have their expertise of what they do.
Mhm.
But most of them have people that they also know. I mean, I see Phil here. He's here through Steve and other resources. We've got, I can go on and on here, but I really appreciate the people that show up and participate, but I really appreciate all they do. Amateur radio has a lot going for them, and the reason is for a lot of people in this particular meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
True. All right, Dan, I'll get you the video, or not the PDF of the charts, and I have to make a little mod to it to take some of the animation out because stuff overlaps. I'll get that to you and get that straight away.
Okay, appreciate it. Appreciate everybody.
No worries.
Say 73s and see you next week, if not before.
All right. Thanks, everybody.